Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of It's Needed, the podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement and the community. It's your boy, Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Barriers United, and I have the wonderful privilege of welcoming my brother from another back on the podcast this week, Mr. ohnoitsdapopo.
What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
AJ, what is good, my brother?
I'm blessed, man. I am blessed.
Bro, it was the weirdest thing. Like the last episode we had, bro, that was the first episode we had not had you on, bro. So it was a good episode. We had my brother Joe on who filled in, and he was a great guest, but it was different not having my brother on, bro. So it's good to have you back. We can't do that
dog. Again, man. Like, we can't have that happen again. I don't like that feeling.
Oh no!
Hey, I was hoping your electricity went out or something at the house the whole time, man.
I was over here having tryouts. I'm over here having tryouts for another co-host.
We're talking about practice.
We talking about practice. I had a line going out my door like the movie Sing, bro. Like,
get
your tryout on.
In my mind, that's what was going on. I was like, man, all right. I hope he forgot to pay his electricity bill or something, man. Hope his internet go out.
Oh man, man.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, brother. It has been so for all of our listeners and viewers that are listening to this right now. These last few weeks for AJ more so than me, but for both of us, has been just very, very trying. One thing's for sure, man. When you're doing the Lord's work, you will definitely be tried and tested. His word says that, man. That's what the Bible says. That His word says that they prosecuted me. What makes you think they're not going to persecute you, man? So
exactly. I went to church, so not today because today is Sunday, but the past Sunday. And before I walked into the church, my pastor pulled me aside and he's like, AJ, he's like, I want you to know two things. I'm like, yes, sir. He goes, the first thing, he's like, you're covered in prayer. And I was like, I appreciate that. It's good to hear.
Exactly.
I'm like, all right. And then he goes, the second thing is, he goes, you could always tell where God is doing the most work because that's where you'll find the devil as well. And I was like, that's it. I was like, that's exactly it.
Man.
That's exactly it. So we're going to be tested. We should expect it.
Actually,
we should welcome it to a sense, right? Like we should be
exactly.
like, okay, I'm doing the Lord's work. Like
we should, man. And I was just telling my buddy that, man. And one of my best friends, he was in my wedding. He's been going through a situation right now, and I won't get into the specifics of it, but he's a police officer, but he's been going through some crazy situation from a civil and legal standpoint for about a year and a half now, man. He was over my house yesterday and we were just talking, and it's tough, man. He's like, man, how do you keep that faith when you're in the middle of the storm? And that's the hard thing. And it's not just, and I think the reminder of that is we got a lot of listeners out there that are going through tough times right now. And I was listening to a sermon on over a couple weeks ago, and it was talking about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, man, how they was in the fiery furnace, man. And just because they stood up for what they believed in, and God was in there in the midst, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of people, AJ included, and a lot of people out there, a lot of our listeners that are in that fiery furnace right now. And nobody said that fiery furnace is going to be comfortable, but the one thing that's the best thing part about it is God is in that fiery furnace with you. And so when you think about those three, when you think about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, I bet you it wasn't comfortable when they was in that furnace, you know what I mean? But I know God was up in there. And the reason I say it wasn't comfortable because even if I wasn't being, taken over by some flames, just the mere fact that there's flames around me make you uncomfortable. And I think that's what's going on with us, man. We got flames around us, in so many other areas of our life right now. But yet we got God is there right in the middle with us. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. Like when you're going through the storm, it doesn't make it easier, right? Like it's still gonna suck, but it makes you optimistic knowing that one, you're going through it for a reason, and two, you know what the outcome is gonna be. Because we always know what the outcome is going to be. Like we always come out on top because we're believers, and that's what we're promised. So just weathering the storm, brother.
And God is one, man. God is one. It's finished, man. And so we already know, like you said, we already know where our faith and trust lies, man. And so with that being said, man, let's get into some good news first. And some, on a brighter note. Well, actually, no, I don't want to let me go into the officer down first. I want to start there. And then we'll work our way up to some good news, and then we're gonna talk about my boy AJ's comeback. And so Officer Down. So since the last podcast that we had, which was June 10th, that's when we recorded. We've had 7 officers that have lost their life in the line of duty. So far this year, we're at 24 by gunfire, 22 automobile related, and 12 others. One of the most recent one, which is pretty sad, is you had a lady that was responding to a domestic violence call, And it sounds like she was just going to help the lady leave. And we've done that so many times as police officers. You'll go to domestic violence, and if there's nothing physical or nothing like that, then you just have one go another place and the other one go another place. So it sounds like that's what she was doing. She was actually helping the female get some property out of the house, and while she's standing there waiting for the female to get some property, the male half is inside and basically uses a rifle and ambushes her and shoots her. The lady was the officer was in the backyard for, I think they said, about 30 to 50 minutes before a Bearcat was able to break entry and get her and retrieve her. So and she ended up succumbing to her wounds later. So that's just a terrible situation. And we talk about, as police officers, so many unknowns that we go to. You don't know what you're going to get until you get there. 90% of the time when you go to unknown trouble is nothing. But that 10% of the time when you show up, it's something, and you have no clue what it is until you get there. And so, and many times those unknown troubles will cost you your life or cost an officer their life, and that's what's scary. So, my heart goes out to those families. That officer, I believe, she was up north, so she's from California. So that's a sad thing, man.
No, absolutely, man, absolutely. We have a saying here, like everything's good until things aren't good, and then it's time to be the police. Yeah, and we know those calls. Like we know the details. We know like the dispatcher's voice, the call taker's voice. The area we're dispatched. Like when we're sent on that run, it's time to be the police.
Exactly, exactly,
man. And it's just, that's just the unfortunate reality of not only this job, but this world that we're living in. There's clearly like a lot of hate, a lot of evil in this world, and with this job, like we're tasked to take that evil on head on. So yeah, absolutely, man.
You ain't never lie. And so speaking of unknown troubles, I'm going to talk about a call that I actually went on Thursday. I was actually working patrol, so I can't really get into all the specifics because, like I said, this is a very, very recent incident. And so without, disclosing all the details of everything, it's a very interesting story. So anyways, I'm working patrol because summertime, school's out. And so we've had some shortages at my job, meaning in staffing shortages. And so I went to go work patrol to help out. And there was a call for unknown trouble, and the way it came out, you got an unknown trouble. All that we know, and for if you're not a police officer listening to this podcast, an unknown trouble basically is something where, hey, somebody calls the police, but the dispatch can't get enough information to understand what's going on, but they know it's important to get officers moving in that direction ASAP. So that's what this was. Right. It was an unknown trouble. The reporting party basically ended up saying like, hey, my husband or something like that is on top of this guy who has a bullet wound. And she said, my husband is armed, but he had a license to carry a firearm. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, this is a home invasion, and the guy basically is protecting his household and ends up shooting the guy. Well, shortly after, we got additional information that said that my husband is not the one that shot him. So immediately I'm thinking like, okay, this is, attempted homicide, a homicide, whatever it may be. Right. So I ended up just happened to be right around the corner from this call. I end up right around the corner. I go there. I'm the first one on scene. As soon as I pull up, I see this guy, the victim, laying on the ground. And so the RP is actually holding on to his wound. I immediately get there. As soon as I get there, I roll the guy over and put my hands on his chest to stop the bleeding, to apply pressure. The craziest part about this situation, though, man, when I rolled this dude over, I noticed it was one of my students that goes to my high school that I'm a school resource officer at. So, and this is not just one of my students, bro. Like, this is a student that I say what's up to all the time. I talk to, we laugh, we play, we joke around. So I'm looking at it, man, and it was crazy, bro. My man was pale. His eyes were kind of rolling back in his head a little bit. He had that shortness of breath. He started to gargle, foam at the mouth a little bit. And so if you're an officer and you've ever been on a dead body call or anything like that, or if you ever seen somebody die or pass away, this was all the precursors to that. It was my man was getting cold and everything. And so, long story short, it felt like an eternity for the fire department to get there, and but they got there, and really, hindsight 2020, it probably wasn't that long at all, but it just felt like an eternity. And meanwhile, as this is going on, you got You know, we have suspects that are still in the area. We're trying to, you know, shut the scene down. So it's chaotic, very, very chaotic. We're in a neighborhood. Long story short, without getting into the investigation, because, you know, I don't want to get into all of that right now since it's still active case. But the victim goes to the hospital. I follow him while he's there. The doctors are like, they initially say, hey, look, we don't need to do surgery. It's a through and through. They're not going to do surgery. We're just going to put him in ICU. So he's in ICU. While he's in ICU, the doctor comes in and says, man, he's losing a lot of blood still. So they end up rushing him to the OR and do an emergency surgery on him to try to stop the bleeding. I called the nurse to talk to the nurse, say, hey, what's going on? She said, hey, he's losing a lot. Like, he's lost 2 quarts of blood already, and it's not looking good. So in my mind, I'm just, you know, obviously, and one of the coolest parts about, well, I don't want to say the coolest things, but it was cool, but this part wasn't cool, obviously, with him going to OR. But when his mom and grandma got to the hospital, they were like, are you Officer Tillman? I was like, yeah, I'm Officer Tillman. They were like, man, he talks about you so much. They were like, we know exactly who you are, man. They were like, he talks about you all the time, man. And so that kind of made my heart melt to know, like, man, like, he even thought about me like that. And so, you know, I'm praying, man, the whole time. I'm following the ambulance, praying. I get to his ICU. Before he goes into OR, I put my hand on him. I start praying. And so, you know, later I talked to the nurse. She's like, yeah, it's not looking good. So the next day, obviously this is going on through the night now. So I give mom a phone call the next morning to check up on him, say, hey, what's the status? You know, and I'm hoping, like, please don't tell me, like, she's going to say he passed during the night. So right. I'm calling mom, phone's ringing, the phone answers, and it's my man that picks up the phone.
No.
Yeah, answers the phone. He's like, Officer Tillman, what's up, man? I'm like, oh, my man, what's going on? So it was cool to hear his voice. And so I still get chills listening to it. So he answers the phone, and I'm like, hey, man, how you feeling? He's like, man, I'm hurting. And so he started going into the investigation. I'm like, hey, bro, let's not chill. Right now. Just chill, bro. I just want to hear from you, man. So I ended up going to the hospital that day. I brought him a hat, man. It's funny because he always, at school, he would always get his hats taken because you can't wear hats unless it's a school hat. And so my man got like 18 hats taken throughout the year. So I went to the mall, man, picked my man up a hat and brought it to him. And so I got a picture. I'll send you the picture, and maybe I'll see if I can post it. But I posted. I took a picture with him. But man, that was probably one of the coolest things. And so last night I got a text message from him, actually, and this was actually probably even more cool. And just so a little bit of history about this guy, man. His family has been in the city for a long time, and his family doesn't have some of his members of his family don't have the best interaction with law enforcement. You know, certain type of activity, you know, that I can't really discuss. But one of the things that he said was, he said, hey, Officer Tillman, I'm in a new room. It's your boy. He says his name, but for the sake of the podcast, I'm not going to say. He was like, it's your boy. I'm in the 5th room or whatever, 5th floor or whatever. He was like, I'd love for you to stop by and meet my dad, because he's not the type to like cops, but he's really thankful for what you did, and he heard a lot of good things about you from me. And I really want you to meet my dad, but if you're busy, don't worry about it. I'm doing a lot better. I'm eating good and feel okay. Thank you for saving my life. So, bro,
that's deep, man. That's deep,
man. It was,
that's awesome, man.
It was a crazy experience. And I was just I was like, what are the odds, man? Like, you know, I work at patrol, and I just happened to be the first dude there. And dog, I honestly, man, there was a couple times when I was holding him in my arms, man. Like, I'm thinking, like, he's not gonna make it. He's not going to make it. You know what I mean? And I tell my kids, I tell my students all the time, like, look, you know, you cannot take life for granted. Like, you could be here 1 minute and gone the next. And that was a testament, man. My man made it throughout. He made it, man. And that's all God, man. That's all God. And so my only hope is at the end of this, God will get the glory from him and his family. And so just what an amazing situation. Something that just started so terrible that just ended so great. And so all the people listening to this podcast, AJ included, man, there are times where we'll go through these dark tunnels, man, but there is always light at the end of every dark tunnel.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Amen.
You know?
Amen. So you're not going to believe this. you're literally not gonna believe this. Like, I'm gonna have to text you a bunch of stuff in order for you to believe this. Friday night, driving down the street, I get a dispatch to a shooting, and I show up, and a kid that I don't want to say I mentor him, but I mean, I've been in his life for 5 years, checking up on him. I literally just talked to him 3 hours prior to this, got shot. And he was in he was in critical condition, and like you said, you know, I didn't think he was gonna make it. He was bad on scene. He had to have like emergency surgery. He just took a turn for the best, so he's gonna pull through.
Wow, bro!
Just Friday.
Wow,
literally, this Friday.
Serious?
So 2
bro?
days ago. 2 days ago, the exact same scenario. 100%. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not joking. I'll text you all the stuff to verify it. Yeah,
as if I'm not gonna believe it.
And I remember sitting in the car and you know, just praying like Lord, like no, like this can't go down like this. Like I mean, so much so that he graduated last year, but when he graduated, me, the wife, and 2 other couples had already made plans a year prior on this date to go on this like crazy skiing trip that we talked about on the podcast a while ago.
Yeah.
And actually, I think I even talked about him on that podcast because he invited me to his graduation a week before we left. And I was like, absolutely, I'll be there. And he sends me the date, and I was just like, bruh, I was like, I'm gonna be like out of the state. And he was just like, you could tell he was like devastated, like, oh man, it's all right. But I was texting him the whole day, like, bro, I'm so proud of you. And he was sending me like pictures of him in his cap and gown. And so yeah, that's
bro. You know what?
Say to that, man.
You know what's funny?
Yeah.
2 things from this situation. One, it's a sign for you and I. It's a sign for you and I to continue to realize that the work that you and I do, man, it truly does matter, man. Like, despite the nonsense, despite, you know, the crap that's going on social media, whatever it may be, like, only you and I know, and God, obviously, and those that are closest to us know, like, the work that we do truly does matter. And I was telling my sergeant this, because my sergeant said, I sent him the screenshot of the text message, and he was like, man, that's amazing, man, breaking barriers. And I was like, you know, the craziest thing about this, Sarge, I was like, this had nothing to do with any program that I've spoke at. This had nothing to do with any speech that I gave. This just had everything to do with me being who I am and understanding.
Yes, bro.
You know, like, if you can be a human being and be real with people, man, and your heart wearing your shoulders, man, that's what's so powerful about it. And it's just so, when we do this podcast, when we do our conference, when we do any type of presentation or speech, that's just a reflection of who we are as people. And and so, bro, like, these two situations, there's no coincidence. And I want our listeners to know that I did not tell AJ about this situation before the podcast. AJ didn't tell me about his situation before the podcast. We save it for this podcast because we want the most authentic, natural reactions from each other. And look what happened, man. We had 2 similar situations back to back. And I think God did that as a sign to let us know, to at least let me know, like, you guys are on the right track. Don't get discouraged, man. These other things that we're going through is just it's trivial compared to the real work that's being done, man, and lives have been saved.
100%. You know, for those of you who don't know, Ryan and I talk pretty much every day, especially within like the past 2 weeks. And this is a conversation that we've had a lot. I believe it's no coincidence that I'm being tested the same time that Ryan is being tested, and in this manner, right? Like in this manner, where things are just hard and rough for whatever reason. But I'm also a firm believer that when you're tested, like, you know, you are walking in like God's work. Like you're walking in your faith. You're doing what God wants you to do. So it's kind of like, you know, on one hand, you're like, man, like, this sucks, like, so bad. Like, this storm is hard. Like, it feels like it's not giving up. Like, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You start to question, like, almost everything that you believe in. But then on the other hand, you're like, you know what? Like they hated Jesus. Think about how powerful it is. Like, they hated Jesus. Like Jesus himself had haters, like ours, like the King of all kings. So who are we to think like, man, like life is gonna be peachy, right? Like, come on, come on,
exactly.
So it's this weird like balancing act. But I did tell you before the podcast that I received a message on IG probably about 30 minutes before we started recording. And I just pulled it up because I feel like it goes hand in hand with what we're talking about right now. So instead of sending it to you like I said I would, I just want to read it. I'm not going to say her name, so let me skim through this real quick. But it says, I'm not sure if you will read this, but I just wanted to let you know a lot of people admire you. There's no doubt that you have one of the toughest jobs. And in parentheses, she says, a close second to teachers, LOL. And it's not, and it's stressful. As a teacher, I can relate to not being able to please everyone and being shed in a bad light. My kids and I are going through a lot right now, and your videos give us laughs and inspiration during these difficult times. My 4-year-old is currently receiving chemo, and when she is in the hospital receiving treatment, she loves watching your videos to pass time. Man, I'm getting choked up reading this.
Wow.
It's kind of like a break from having to think about why she is there. My 8-year-old watches your videos and tries to copy your moves. He claims he is building up his stamina to race. Haha. I can't imagine how hectic things are for you right now in this moment, but please know you are appreciated and you still have a lot of people who look up to you. Like,
wow, bro.
That right there is why we do what we do. That right there is why we get tested. That right there is why we go through storms when everyone else is experiencing sunshine, because we are doing God's work and we are giving people hope where hope may not exist. So we have to prepare ourselves for these storms, and this is for everybody. This isn't just for us. Like, if you're listening to this, like, you have to prepare yourself for the storm if you are doing the right thing, but just know that it's worth it. You're going to make it out. Keep that chin up, and you're going to reach more people. You're going to spread more hope when you come out of this storm. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, it'll be all right. The storm this, the storm that. The storm is going to suck. I'll tell you, the storm is going to suck. Push through it, keep that chin up, and reach more people.
Dear Heavenly Father, I ask that you would bless that little girl or the 4-year-old that's going through that chemo right now, Lord. For you just called me to pray for that child. I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 7-month-old, and I can't imagine. And as me and my boy AJ, we've been struggling lately with some of the things that's been going on, Lord. I just ask that you would just allow us to remember those that are hurting worse than we are. That baby knows nothing about anything yet, but yet is being tried and tested more than we have ever been, Lord. So just extend your hand to them and anybody else that's going through certain things right now in life, Lord. You know what it is. So I just ask that you would watch over them, Lord. We're doing your work, and I truly believe that we're onto your path, Lord. So just allow us to stay strong and allow people to see you through us, Lord. We love you and thank you for it in your son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Bro, I feel like we need it, man. Man, this man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I literally got that 30 minutes ago. 30 minutes ago, I got that. So,
you know what? I've been looking forward to this podcast for this reason, right? And this reason alone, man. I've been saying since day one, this podcast is therapy, but it's therapy more than I've even realized, man. And this has been a true testament to what I mean by that, man. So what I want to do is I want to transition to something else right now. Is the last week I posted a couple videos. We start doing something new. I start doing breakdowns of police videos, and also just videos that involve members of the community, either right, wrong, or indifferent. And for the most part, man, we received some really good feedback. The first video I showed was of a male that was on a bus, and he had an overdose on Narcan. And when he had an overdose on Narcan, he was revived. The officers took him off the bus, told him, hey, we need to get you more treatment. He said no. The officers told him to take his hands out of his pocket. He told them no. He doesn't like when officers touch him. They asked him, they told him they saw a bulge. And essentially, after looking at that bulge, he said it's a phone. Shortly after, he pulls out a gun, basically starts shooting at the officers and the other first responders, so the fire department and EMT. Ultimately, this gun battle lasts for about 30 seconds. He's using humans as human shields, and sadly, he ends up killing a firefighter in the midst of it. My commentary on that was obviously that as officers, we don't know what we're getting into, and we have to always be prepared for the worst. And so without going into a breakdown, because you guys can view the breakdown on our Instagram page, we got pretty good feedback from the standpoint of, people getting knowledge of why we do what we do as police officers. But the very next day, what I ended up doing was I ended up posting a video from Phoenix, Arizona. And it was of some officers that basically chased, it was a short chase of some shoplifting suspects into an apartment complex. And lo and behold, they, no matter what happened anyways, some curse words were being exchanged. The officer basically told one of the guys that, he's going to shoot, he's going to put an effing cap in his head. And then you had another officer that told the lady to put her child down, and he kept saying, put your effing hands in the air multiple times. The lady's like, my baby can't walk and stuff like that. And so the reason I bring that video up is because I actually faced some criticism from police officers about commenting about how I didn't think it was appropriate. And I think officers got my words mistaken. And I think their assumption was I was saying that police officers shouldn't cuss when they're working. That's not what I was saying. I've cussed at people when I've worked before. Sometimes your blood gets pumping, your blood pressure goes up, and I've ended up, just this past week actually, I had a situation where somebody actually went to bite me, and I actually, I ended up cussing at him. And so that video, when I broke that video down, my what I was saying was, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that it's wrong necessarily for police officers to cuss. What I was saying is from a tactical matter, and from the way the officers, the severity of the crime to what the officers did, it didn't seem like it was warranted. And the reason I think that's important to understand is because, unfortunately, man, as police officers, we're going to get into this with you in a minute, AJ, but as police officers, sometimes we can't always be so quick to just defend police officers. And trust me, I'm a police officer, and I hope that, people would defend me if I felt I was doing something right. I defended my boy AJ a few weeks ago, and we'll talk about why I defended him. But at the same time, one of the reasons that there's a gap with law enforcement in the community right now is because we're so quick to be defensive. And the analogy I use of that is this. When my son goes to school, that's my baby boy. I love my baby boy to death. And, he's 5 years old. If he screws up in the classroom, if he does something wrong, if the teacher tells me, hey, your son was acting a fool today, a lot of times parents are so quick to defend their kid because it's their child, and it negates the fact that they actually did something wrong. And so when in actuality he did something wrong, and what he did was not warranted, and the behavior needs to be corrected. Well, sometimes as police officers, we do the same thing because, and I get it, man, we're in the same profession and we want to make sure we're defensive of everybody. But sometimes we're so quick to defend each other and we negate the fact that actually we may have screwed up. And in this situation in Phoenix, I actually talked to some people from that department, and I found out that maybe the actions could have been dealt with differently. And I back everything up by case law and police policies. In case law, one of the things I brought up was Graham versus Connor. And actually, it's funny because the same video that you had that went viral, AJ, I backed your video up from a defensive mechanism, not from an emotional standpoint, like that's my boy, but just based on case law and police policies and practices. And one of the ones that I brought up was Graham versus Connor. And one of the main things with Graham versus Connor is it says the severity of the crime. What's the severity of the crime in that situation of a shoplifting? Well, the severity of a crime is a petty theft. Now, did they run? Maybe, they may have ran from it. But at the end of the day, what's the severity of the crime? It's really nothing. And if you read the article, if you do a little bit more research, you'll find out that the officer or the victims of the crime never actually even pressed charges. They didn't want prosecution because it was only a misdemeanor. So now you have a situation where these officers look really, really bad on camera. They're doing some things that they shouldn't probably be doing. And the victim doesn't even want prosecution. So whose butt is on the line now? Now it's the officer's butt on the line because they did something that they maybe shouldn't have done. Where your situation was different because, again, if you look at the severity of the crime, without getting into specifics of your situation, because we can't because of the investigation, I do know that you guys were there for a shooting that happened, and you guys are trying to preserve a crime scene. You guys can't let even people in. If you watch that video, there's a gun on the ground. Now, whether or not the gun is real or not, it doesn't matter. Who knows at the time? But you guys are working an active investigation. You got somebody that's trying to break that threshold. There's a difference there. There's a difference between the severity of the crimes. And so everything I try to do, I try to back up based on, again, case law and police policies. And so the reason I brought this up was because one of the frustrating things was I had police officers basically come out and try to ridicule me, which I don't mind. I don't mind the ridicule anymore. I've gotten it so much I don't even care.
But used to it.
Yeah, I got used to it. But the thing that sucks is like you're ridiculing me based on me trying to give an opinion. And it's not necessarily Monday morning quarterback. I mean, you could think of it if you wanted to like that. But we have a standard to uphold as police officers. And I even put out a video shortly after that talking about the high standard. And I had somebody tell me about putting out a high standard. They're like, okay, at what point should we, at what point is that standard too high? And again, people mistake my words. It's like, I'm not telling you to be perfect. I'm not saying as police officers we're going to be perfect, because we're not. Lord knows how many mistakes I've made. But what I'm saying is the expectation level should be higher for us. The standard should be higher. We should be held to a different standard than somebody that's flipping my burger at McDonald's. You know what I mean? If you spit in my burger, at the end of the day, I'm probably not going to die from that. But as a police officer, if I take your freedom away, and again, somebody was like, well, what do you mean by taking freedom away? Well, we're the only profession that if I tell you to stop and you don't stop, now I can arrest you for that. That's taking your freedom away. It doesn't sound nice. Yeah. But we should be held to a higher standard in that regard. And so I guess I was just a little frustrated, man, with some of the officers that were, trying to come at me in some type of way, because the only way that we're going to be able to develop transparency and trust with the community and police is that we both have to equally be able to right our wrongs. We cannot always be so defensive and trying to defend our action. We both have to be able to say, you know what, I screwed up. You know what I mean? Forgive me for that. So that shit, I had to get that off my chest, man. It was just kind of weighing on my chest.
No, absolutely, man. And it's no secret. The times of police officers backing police officers to the point where it seems like police officers do no wrong are the reasons why we are in the shoes we are in today. And if that doesn't make sense to you, I'm not sure how else to break it down. You have to understand that I get it. Trust me, I get it. Like, I think we have the roughest job in the world. Like, I think we are scrutinized. I think we have to make split decisions, life or death decisions. I think we have to make decisions so fast at times, and other people get paid a lot more money and have a lot more time to break those down, i.e. judges and lawyers. Anyway, with that said, I don't want you to think that I'm saying like, oh, I'm not pro police officer or whatever. But you also have to understand that, like, we have to hold each other accountable. If one of your coworkers, if one of our sisters or brothers in blue that wears that badge does something and we fail to call them out, then we can't be the same officers who are upset at the community for their lack of trust. You know what I mean? Like we have to hold each other accountable before anybody else holds us accountable for these situations. And it's kind of ironic that you brought up somebody at like Burger King flipping our burgers. The very first time I went to Harvard and I was speaking, I made a comparison. And the comparison was about how people like to take one bad police encounter and blame all the rest of the police officers for it. And I used the metaphor. I said, what's the difference between going to McDonald's and you order a cheeseburger with, I don't know, no tomatoes or something, right? And you get it and there's like 18 tomatoes on there. Like, do you automatically think like, man, you know what? Forget McDonald's. McDonald's, they hate whoever, blah, 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 blah. You don't. And as I'm going on like this, I'm like snapping, right? Like I'm like boom, 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 boom. There's this woman sitting in the front row. She's like kind of like an older woman for the classroom setting, and she's got her hands crossed and her leg is shaking, and I'm like, ooh, I mean, she is not feeling what I'm saying right now. Like, I'm picking up on the cues, right?
She about to give it to you.
So I get done, and she was the first hand up. Bam! She puts her hand up. I go, yes, ma'am, and she bursts out into tears, and she goes, you know what the difference between someone who puts extra tomatoes on my sandwich because they don't like me because of X, Y, and Z, and a police officer who doesn't like me because X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, what's that? And she goes, you have the right to take my freedom and my life. Or you have the ability to take my freedom and my life. And I was just like, you're right. Like, you were absolutely right. Like, and it was from that moment on, I was like, this is way deeper than that. So like the metaphor you used right there was spot on. Like, we have the ability to take someone's freedom and someone's life. So we have to hold each other accountable. We have to, especially if we want the trust between the community.
Exactly. And so, that's the expectation. And so you can't get mad if I say we should, we need to hold ourselves to a high standard. Like, you can't be upset at that. I get what you're saying when you say like, hey, how high is too high, but you know what? There shouldn't be a limit on how high is too high. We should strive every single day to try to be the best we can be. Not saying that every day is going to be perfect, because God knows. When I cussed that dude out the other day, when, you know, he bit me, or when he bit my finger, I felt bad. I felt convicted, because I'm like, shoot, man, maybe is there a way that could I reacted better? You know what I mean? But
Charlie bit me.
Charlie bit me, for real. That's how I felt, bro. Charlie bit my finger. That's how I felt, and I reacted that way. You know, I'm like, man, is there a way that I could have slowed myself down? So I'm not saying that, officers, I'm not telling you that you're gonna be perfect. I'm not telling you that when we raise this bar and we say we have to set a high standard, I'm not saying that you're gonna be a perfect police officer. But here's what I am saying. I am saying that we do need to study case law. We do need to study police policy. We do need to be the best tactical officers that we can be, because when that situation does come up and we are, you know, responsible for saving somebody's life or having that restraint when it's hard to, we need to be able to stand firm and say, I did this because of A, B, C, and D. But when you go home after work and you don't, you know, you're not studying case law, or you're not reading police policies, and I'm not saying you need to do this every day, or when you show up to your training and you're not taking it serious, then that's what I'm saying is we're not necessarily living up to that great standard. Even when it comes to our fitness, if I'm not necessarily working out or eating better here and there, or, you know, if I'm always eating the greasy foods, am I really living up to that high standard? I'm not, because, and that can potentially hurt somebody. You know what I mean? Because I failed to take care of myself. Therefore, now I may use other tools that take somebody else's life because I wasn't in shape. So that's all I'm saying is, like, when I say we have a high standard, our standard should be higher than others. Those are the things I mean. I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying you need to be a perfect police officer, but all I'm saying is just take it serious. Whatever you do, we signed up for a profession, and whether you like it or not, when we signed up, we knew that this profession is more demanding than others. So on one end, you can't be upset when you say, oh, the community doesn't understand how hard our profession is. But on the other end, you can't just not start taking stuff seriously because you don't feel like it. You know what I mean? So if you're going to do it, do it. You know what I mean? If you're not, you're not. And so that kind of leads me right into, you know, the situation with you, AJ, and I really want to talk about that right now, because, and obviously before we talk about this, I want all of our listeners and viewers to understand that we're not going to specifically talk about the events that occurred on that day that AJ had. Most people have seen the video. There's a video out there, if you haven't, where AJ uses force on somebody and it went viral. So we're not going to necessarily talk about that video because there's an investigation, and for the sake of investigations, you know, I like to do things the right way, and we're not going to talk about it. But what I do want to talk about is I want to talk about some of the aftermath of things, and I want to also talk about, you know, how situations can get taken out of context. And, you know, one of the things that disturbed me the most about that situation, AJ, was how people start judging you based off of a 30-second clip, and all the work that you've done, all your heart that you've displayed to, you know, the world, and so many of your actions was immediately, or what they tried to strip it away based off of a 30-second video. And that's what hurt me the most, is because people start, you know, judging a heart based off of a 30-second video, and you can't necessarily judge a person's heart. That's why when I did the evaluation of that Phoenix police situation, I didn't say the officers were necessarily bad, and I didn't say they were bad because I don't know those guys. I don't know. They could have been having a bad day. I don't know. I said it was bad police work, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad officers or bad men. I don't know them. Now, they could be bad men. I don't know. But the thing was, I chose not to judge those officers based on that video. I can judge, you know, whether or not I think it was tactically okay or not, but I didn't. So when it comes to your situation, man, when I did a breakdown of your situation in the video, and I just did it based on the video. I didn't talk to you about any specific facts about the situation. I can't, because you know, obviously all that stuff is confidential. But I broke it down as if I was any other viewer watching that video. But I also broke it down from a police officer standpoint. And I came to your defense not because you're my boy. I came to your defense based on facts, based on case law, and based on police policies. And when I broke that video down like that, there was nothing else to be said. In fact, there was somebody, I want to read it, and I'll turn it over to you here in a second, AJ. But this was one of the coolest text messages, or actually comments, that I had got after. I got a lot of good feedback, but this was one of the coolest ones. It says, "You are doing God's work, brother. You brought me from a boiling point of a 10 down to a 1 with the facts of this video. I knew this was just another situation of police use of unnecessary force, but it wasn't. Keep up the good work. And that's in regards to AJ's video.
So with that said, there are 3 things that I do every single time before I judge somebody, and I use that word judge very, very loosely, right? Just because that's the context in which we're talking right now. The first thing I do is I get the complete story, okay? And I don't mean watching a 30-second clip, reading what somebody wrote underneath that 30-second clip or on that 30-second clip. The second thing I do is I look at past history, right? Like if you have a history of doing whatever this action is. And then the third thing I do is I look at your intent. Like what was your intent in that action? I'll just throw a hypothetical out there, right? Like if I pull somebody over for speeding and they tell me, look, man, my wife's in labor. I'm flying to get to the hospital. Okay, that's your full story. I'm getting the full story from you, right? Like you blew this stop sign. You're going 80 miles in 35, whatever. This is your full story in which and why you're speeding, right? So then I'll look at your history. All right. Now, if you got 87 speeding tickets, it ain't adding up, right? But if I look at you and you're like, oh, you got a couple speeding tickets, like, all right. And then if I look at your intent, right? Like your intent is to get your wife to the hospital so you can safely deliver your child. I react and judge, once again, using that word loosely, people off of those 3 things. So when this video caught wind, I was getting a lot of flack and a lot of people like reaching out to me and saying some crazy things, like crazy things. And the frustrating part for me, and we've talked about this on a prior podcast, is anytime something like this happens, you're not allowed to really say anything. You're not allowed to talk about what happened, why it happened. You're really not allowed to defend yourself, which is frustrating when you have like a social media platform, because if you think about it, and I'm not comparing myself to any of these people, so please don't take this that way. But when you think of like celebrities, and anytime there's a scandal or there's a rumor about a celebrity, like they address it immediately. Immediately, they hold their own press conference with their iPhone in selfie mode, right? Like boom, hey, look, world, this is what's going on. This is why I did this. This is a lie. Boom, 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 boom. And then people go, oh, okay. We knew there was more to the story. You know, we go back to loving you. The unfortunate part about our job is, and this isn't just me speaking specifically about myself, this is me speaking for police officers as a whole, is a lot of times when things like this happen, we can't defend ourselves. We have to let the investigation play out. There's a lot of other things that go into this. And then by the time we are allowed to defend ourselves, the damage is done and no one cares. Like they're on to the next person, right? So something else that this taught me is I always want you to remember this. If you have social media, you could use it for 1 or 2 things. You could use it to spread positivity, or you could use it to spread hate. And the unfortunate reality is, and if you look at websites such as like WorldStar, a lot of people like to spread hate, whether it's fights, whether it's people looking bad, like in a situation. And it's easy to click that share button to quote unquote expose somebody or to make somebody look bad. But yet you could have someone who's doing so much good in the world, and you don't hit that share button one time. You don't talk about it. You don't like it. You don't tell other people about the good that's being done. Like you don't share that positivity just in general. But when something bad happened, it's like, oh, we knew it. You know, let's click the share button. Let's make this person look bad. So with that said, I'll touch on what you were talking about, just to kind of put things into perspective. Since this has happened, I couldn't tell you how many messages I got that are just downright evil. And I'm not going to go into detail because I don't want a lot of people that I love who listen to this podcast to know about them. But just know that I'm getting downright evil messages on the daily. And by the in between 10 to 100 a day, just based off of a clip that somebody decided to make myself look bad. The beauty behind that is I still drive down the same streets at work. I still pull up to the same houses. Kids still run up to my cruiser. Community members still run up to my cruiser. I'm getting more phone calls than ever from community members right here in the city that I work, and they're telling me, like, you know, AJ, like, we love you, man. Like, we know who you are. We know where your heart is. Don't let them get you down. So that's kind of the light in this situation. And I know I'm kind of like jumping around because this is like a tricky subject for me to talk about right now. But just know that if you've listened to this podcast long enough, then you should know who I am as a person. First and foremost, you should know that I'm a believer in Christ, which should tell you enough about who I am. You should also know that there are two things that we stand for. We stand against bad police officers who do bad things. You know, we just got done talking about it a few minutes ago, and we also stand for the community. If you know all of those things, then a 15-second clip should not change your mind, or should not even make you question about who either one of us are, especially without doing your homework, without figuring out the officer's intent, and without figuring out their past history. So
one thing, so I don't know if I told you this, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But you remember Tam, right? We had Tam I think we had Tam like on our third episode. And so I think it was like Civil Rights and Shooting the Breeze was the name of the episode or something like that. And so Tam, for those of you guys that don't know, Tam is a good friend of mine, but Tam is a civil rights activist, very much against, you know, a lot of negative police brutality type things, but he's a good dude. And so AJ had never met Tam until we shot that podcast episode, and they got to know each other for the course of 2 hours. And so Tam watched that video of your video, and he sent it to my sister. And so my sister kind of thought, and Tam, yeah, this is what Aaron told me. So Tam, if it's different, just let me know. But Aaron hit my sister up, or Aaron hit Tam up, and was like, "So what you think about this, Tam?" And he was like, "Shoot, my man was acting crazy, so my man deserved to get slapped." But the funny part about it was this: is Tam only said that because he knows your heart, and he knows you, and Tam was able to see beyond the 15-second video and judge you by your heart and who you are as a person than a 15-second clip. On the flip side of that, I had a dude that knows me. Yeah. He knows me. He went on and blasted both our profile, Breaking Barriers United, and your profile like 7 consecutive times. And Billy was here when he did that, saying, I can't remember what he was saying, but basically saying you guys are a bunch of phonies, fakes. Bridging what gap based on your video. So I called him. I told him to call me. And I talked to him. And I'm like, "Hey man, let me ask you, man, where do you get your facts from? Like what's making you think this?" And he's like, "Well, it wasn't right." So I kind of gave him a little background. I kind of, based on, again, policies, based on case law, and posed some hypothetical questions for him. And he's like, "Oh shoot, well, I didn't think about it like that." He was like, "Man, like, well, now that you break it down like that, I didn't think about it like that." But here's the sad part about it. It's like, man, the damage is already done. By you already putting those comments out there online, the damage is already done. You cannot take that back. Even if you were to delete it, who's to say how many people have already seen what you put? And so, and then he told me specifically, he was like, "Man, my bad." He was like, "I guess I just made that based on my raw emotion that I was experiencing as I was watching that video." And I get it, man. Like, you see some videos that are not easy to watch, and if you're an emotional person, it's gonna make you feel some type of way. Even when I watched AJ's video, I was like, "Oh shoot, this don't look good at all." Right. But the difference between the two is that I went out and did some research, you know, gathered some other facts, and then made an educated guess, or just thought about it, from an educational standpoint and from a tactical standpoint, and was able to see through it. Now, obviously, my advantages is I'm a police officer, but the one thing I didn't do is I didn't go out there and just start blasting AJ like, "Oh man, this is, blah, 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 blah." You know what I mean? So my point is that people don't realize how much damage we can do when you put out facts. Now, I realize that I take that risk when I evaluate other videos like the one in Phoenix. Now, I tell you, I try to do as much research as I can before I say anything about any situation. I'm not just going to watch a video and come out. Anybody, I get messages every single day like that. People will send me a video like, hey, can you tell me, what do you think about this? They will do that I get it every single day. What do you think about this video? What do you think about that video? And my response to them every single time is, let me do some research and I'll get back to you.
Right.
And before that's all I ask.
So emotionally invested in this that I'm a keyboard warrior, right?
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let me do some research, and that's all I ask. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do want to give a shout out to a person named Keon Puli. I know I'm butchering your name, man, and I'm sorry. I don't even know if you listen to the podcast. But this young man is a comedian, and he originally posted. So someone edited the video and made like a meme, I guess, of it. I don't know if that's what you would call it, but it was split screen. The bottom of the screen had the incident, the use of force, and then the top part of the screen had me dancing with a kid. And the entire video was labeled propaganda and basically said that white police officers go into black communities and use their kids as like props to further infiltrate
D.L.
the
Hughley said that.
Community. Yes. So he shared that video. That's the same exact video that I'm referring to now. So this comedian shared that video, and he was kind of going in on he actually wasn't kind of, he was going in like under the comments. He was like, you know what, like, this is why I don't trust cops, blah, 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 blah. But then a few hours later, and the reason I'm shouting him out is for multiple reasons. The first of which is I don't know him. Like there's no connection there whatsoever. And the second reason that I'm shouting him out is because a few hours after he posted that, he took his own time to do the research. And after he watched it, he deleted his original post and then reposted something else. And I don't know if we could edit it in right here, but he was basically saying like, hey, look, like I watched this video. I thought this at first. Now I watched all the videos, I did my research, and now this is how I feel. He even went on to say that he went to my Instagram page and he was like, man, the community really messes with this dude. He seems like a legit dude trying to do good in the community. So I just want to shout him out for being a man, really, like, because that takes a lot to swallow your pride, especially on social media where you don't see a lot of that for somebody you don't know. And to do the right thing. But something that made me think of is, and it's kind of scary, and I talked to a lot of my coworkers about this, is what would happen if I didn't have this social media following and I went through this incident? Like, where would that leave me? You know, it's and you know, we talk all the time. We come from the same heart. So like we both believe that you need to be like invested in the community, and you have like an amazing saying that, you know, you need to get to know your community before you need to get to know your community, or something along those lines. And I believe that wholeheartedly, but it makes me scared, like, for officers who maybe are good people and just are antisocial, or maybe they're just good people and just want to do like their 9 to 5 and go home, but they do an amazing job at their 9 to 5, but they're not on social media for whatever reason, right? How would that leave them? You know, because I'm in a fortunate situation, right? Like, I have the backing of my community. I do 100%. Like, my community stands behind me. They stand in front of me. They stand side by side. They're covering me in prayer. They're calling me left and right. In the middle of the night, they're checking up on me. But imagine somebody who has the support of their community, but not like on this level, right? Because this is clearly something different and extra. It's just kind of scary, and that's why. Go ahead.
One thing I want to say real quick, because I don't want to lose it, is I think that's why I get so passionate when we talk about those officers that get frustrated with me and putting out bad police videos, is because those officers that, like you just said, they may not be as outgoing as us. They may not have that that platform. Like, if I am as a founder of BBU, or you and I as the co-host of It's Needed podcast, if we can be that voice for them, for the community, to help them, then that to them is everything. But the only way we can have a successful platform like that is we have to be able to be transparent about both sides. And I think that's why I get so frustrated. That's where my passion comes from, is I'm like, look, man, as officers, we have to be willing to call out bad police work. We have to. Because if I'm going to call out a civilian that's acting funny in the community that shouldn't be doing what he's supposed to be doing, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to expect me to make sure I'm also, calling it a spade on the other end as well. So instead of sitting there, bashing us because I put out, a Monday morning quarterback thoughts on a situation, you got to realize is like, we are the only platform out right now that will see something from both sides, from both perspectives. Yeah. We're the only thing that exists like that.
Yeah.
The only thing. And the only way to maintain its integrity is by making sure we call it even on both sides. That's the only way.
It.
You know what I mean? And that's why I'm so passionate. So for those guys that you're speaking of that don't have this type of platform that we have, that's why I do it. I had a lady that said, I'm assuming she's an officer. She's like, well, with your type of platform, you should be careful on what you do. And I'm like, lady, you don't understand how careful I am. Because I realize I'm playing with people's lives. I've said it so many times on this podcast, like, tomorrow, me or AJ can be the subject to a controversial video and look what happened. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what happened. So we are very careful but using our platforms. And I caution other people, celebrities, because when your thing went viral, there were celebrities that made posts that went out to millions of people. Yep. And if they don't know anything about anything, now they automatically perpetuate a false narrative. The last thing I'm going to say is that one of the narratives that came out during that situation was, see, this only perpetuates the fact that police officers use these guys to go out and dance in the communities, so it lulls people to sleep, so that way they can continue the corruption. And now because they're our communities are being distracted by their dancing and stuff like that, when they still have all this corruption. And my response to that is, that's not true. Like, not once has any of my supervisors come to me and said, hey, Ryan, I need you to go dance at your high school tomorrow. This is a song. You're going to dance to Montel Williams or Montel Jordan, and I need you to be on beat. This is the dance move I want you to do. Like, nah, they didn't tell me none of that. When I go back to the beginning of this podcast and I told you about that situation where my student was shot, he didn't tell his parents about me because I dance on campus. He didn't tell his parents about me because I wear cool kicks. He told his parents about me because of the way I treat him as a human being. And so for those of you guys that are putting out that stuff that, oh, these guys are just dancing so that way they can cover up all the other police corruption, it's ridiculous. It's not a true statement. And so that's why our platforms, we recognize, like, man, our platforms are valuable. And that's why I was quick to come to AJ's defenses, because I know AJ's heart. I said it when this happened. I said, AJ's heart did not change from 1 second to another in the matter of a split second. It didn't happen like that. Right. You know what I mean? So, it's just mind blowing to me, man.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And for anyone who may be listening to this or watching this, who's a police officer or in any profession whatsoever, who may be dealing with the same thing, or who may be considering going out into the community and just doing something to help bridge that gap. My message is this: do it. We get all the hate in the world. We get people who want us to fail so bad that they'll self-destruct, like kamikaze style, right? Like they'll fly themselves right into us for them to make us fail, or for them to like deter us or knock us off our path. But I just read you a message, and we just shared stories that hopefully lets you know that it's worth it. It is so worth it. Like, I wouldn't, if I could go back in time and like change this, like, I wouldn't touch it, just because I know like lives are being changed, like souls are being saved, like hope is being spread. So I don't know who you are. Maybe you got to hear this. Maybe I'm talking to nobody, but I hope I'm talking to somebody. Go out there and do it. I don't care what your coworkers think about you. You shouldn't care what your coworkers think about you. You should care what the community thinks about you. You should care what the world thinks about you, right? Like this world is bigger than your coworkers, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a police officer, a firefighter, or a nurse, whatever. Be that change. If you see something flawed in the system that you work in, step up and do the right thing. Step up, but prepare yourself for the storm, but also know that the storm is not going to compare to your reward.
Exactly. And you said it yourself. You said it the best. And, even Martin Luther King had haters. And I was telling my wife that the other day, because, my wife, she was getting frustrated with some of the comments, not just on your stuff, but my stuff. Like, she's like, man, like, this is like upsetting to me. And she was like, I don't necessarily know if I like this. And I'm like, babe, what would have happened if Martin Luther King would have gave up on civil rights when people start saying stuff like that?
Right. Or
It sucks.
Harriet Tubman, right?
Exactly.
Like the Underground Railroad, like it's
It
just
sucks,
so much
bro.
stuff that
It
goes
sucks.
into it.
It sucks, and only them and their family know what they truly went through. It's funny because oftentimes we only see the end result of people, and we think it was easy. That like, man, like how did they get to where they're at? We don't get to see the hard work and effort that goes into it, or the ridicule that goes into it. And so I encourage you, my brother, stay in there. You are truly doing God's work. And again, man, like if without ridicule, we could not change anything, because nobody would know anything was messed up. You know what I mean? And so we need that. We need that ridicule. We need that. It helps us make us stronger men. And so, man, this was good therapy for me, bro. Man, I needed this.
Always. So we got to get this fair or foul.
Fair or foul.
It's low key funny, man. It's low key funny. So,
which one, bro? Because I know you got all types of them.
Oh man, yeah, I got days worth of them. So I'm riding around with Jones the other day, and we're just kind of like talking about whatever. And I'm like, man, Jones, like I'm getting so many crazy messages. Like I should do like a mean tweets, like how like celebrities read like mean tweets. And he's like cracking up, and I was like, man, I should open my Twitter, because I have a Twitter. Like I use it maybe like once every other month, right? Like tops. It was a mistake, man. I opened my Twitter, my phone about blew up, dude. It was just like literally thousands, bro. Like I'm not exaggerating, thousands of just messages of like hate and like just evil, right? So I'm scrolling through and I'm like overwhelmed. I'm just like, man, this is crazy. So I'm scrolling, and I got an iPhone, and I'm sure it goes like this with anything, but sometimes when you're scrolling, like your finger hits like a button and it like pulls up something. So I click on a message, it pulls this up. And dude, I cracked up laughing. I was like, Jones, I got the message I'm gonna read. Like I got the mean tweet I want to read. He's like, what is it? And
I gotta hear it, bro.
It goes, hi, my name is William. I am 15 years old. F you. So shout out, William.
Shout out
you
to
made
William,
the podcast,
bro.
buddy. Shout out to William. You made the podcast, man. I was just like, it started off so sweet and lighthearted, man. Like it was just like, hi, my name's William. I'm 15 or maybe like 13 years old. F you. And it wasn't even like F. It was like spelled out like all caps. I was like, oh, William, I'm telling your mom, man.
Dog.
Your parents that.
Shout out to William, bro. Oh, you know what? I think that's a good segment, man. We're gonna start sharing with some of y'all the mean tweets, bro. Because I had a couple this past week, not a lot, but man, I had a few of them, and I would just laugh. And one of them actually was surprising, because I actually ended up turning it around. My man was like, oh, basically, he had said some nonsense about like, you know what? You guys are some phonies and this and that, or you're a phony, blah, 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 blah. I know how quick I can disarm an officer. You guys do this and that. And so he reposted our video, bro. Like he reposted one of our videos, and he was like, oh, this is, don't go follow this garbage or anything like that. And so like, I went on there, bro, and I was cracking up at myself, because I usually don't do this, but I went on there and commented. I was like, oh, thanks for the repost, bro. A whole 4 views. Because I had like 4 views, bro. And then there was another guy who started to say something similar, but then I had told him like, hey, bro, I understand, man. I understand you're frustrated with police and stuff like that, but I was like, I used to be there. I used to not like police, and I see things differently, blah, 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 blah. And the dude wrote back, and he was like, hey, man, you know what? I actually just went and looked at your page, and, man, I appreciate you. He was like, I'm sorry if I went off the cuff like that, man. Like, I appreciate what you do. And it just rehones this whole point that we've been making today is like, man, just do research, man. Like, we're so quick to just fire at the hip without knowing anything about anything. And my man, like, he actually changed his tone of voice and actually apologized to me. So, we're doing some good work, AJ. I'm very optimistic that we're going to keep going in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree, man. I definitely agree.
So, lastly, 38 days away from the It's Needed conference, y'all. Get your tickets. If you want to go to this conference, DM me. I'm going to give you guys a great offer on coming to this conference. So if you want to come to this conference, DM me, DM AJ, utilize, I think it's hashtag, or actually no hashtag, but you're needed. So YOURENEEDED, you're needed. Yeah, I think I spelled that right. Just
yeah, you did.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So go on to our website. When you go to buy your tickets, it will say enter a promo code. The promo code will be you're needed, and I believe we're giving some crazy incentive right now. It's like $100 off each ticket. So get your tickets. You don't want to miss this event. Shout out to Breaking Barriers United for sponsoring this podcast. The whole team is doing some phenomenal work. Any last parting words for our listeners, AJ? I mean, you've been going through the rut, man. So anything that you want them to know or hear from your heart, man, before we get off this podcast for this week?
Whew, man, a lot. Oh man, my parting words were this, man. It's just do good. Like I know it sounds simple and it sounds easy, and we all fall victim to it. And do good could be something as far as helping a stranger out, buying someone groceries, as easy as sharing something positive on social media instead of the negativity. We live in a very broken world. We live in a hopeless world at times. We live in a dark world at times. Be the light, be the hope, and be the positivity.
Man, there he is. I ain't got nothing to back that up, man. So, AJ, I love you, brother. It was great having you back on, man. It was a great little reunion. The Savage, man, I appreciate you as always. Hey, man, we on baby watch over here, bro. We on baby watch.
Literally a baby savage. You're gonna come out just walking,
any day
walking with a camera, like let's go.
Yeah, let's do it with some headphones on, man. So hey, if you guys like our podcast, make sure you guys leave a review, give us a 5-star rating. It really means the world to us. We want to know how we can improve and make this podcast better for you guys. So we love you. Without further ado, we'll see y'all next week. Take care.
Peace.